You're watching the DMZ America podcast for Thursday, June 18th, 2026. Coming to you from the left, I'm editorial cartoonist Ted Rall. Normally coming to you from the right would be editorial cartoonist Scott Stantis. Scott's out today, so instead we have with us someone that regular followers of DMZ will be familiar with. Mr. Fish, the cartoonist, is here, and we're going to talk about today's main topic, which is the assassination of this Russian cartoonist in Poland. And we'll also just talk about, whatever crosses our minds. Please feel free to like, follow, and share. Please post your questions and comments, and we will put them in. We're going to show some of our work. And thanks for joining us.
Indeed. You had an opportunity actually to say that you've been getting all the mail saying that Scott needs a whole lot of plastic surgery.
That's another squandered humor opportunity. Yep, that's totally true. All right, let me fuck around a little bit with the graphics here and make things a little cleaner, and then we can get to it. All right, so obviously, all right, so let me explain what happened here. So there's this artist who is also, he's a cartoonist. It's fair, it's true. His name was Robert Kuzovkov, I believe is how you pronounce his name. 44 years old. He was Russian, but he was exiled living in Poland. The way his work is described is he's someone who's often been critical of Putin and the Russian government, but also has covered a lot of other stuff, as most political artists do. Anyway, he was shot 5 times in the head and torso this previous Monday outside his house in the city of Biała Podlaska in Poland. According to the authorities, he engaged in public artistic activities using the pseudonym Simon Skrepetski, among others, through which he expressed criticism of the current policies of the Russian authorities. 2 men from Belarus are currently considered suspects. They were arrested near the Belarusian Consulate. Belarus is a close ally of the Russian Federation. We don't know anything more about them, including their names. We just know that they were 33 and 37 years old. That city is 20 miles away from the border with Belarus. It's not the first. I mean, obviously, I want to caution that often, we think that someone's political work is what gets them killed, and it's not always true. I mean, like Malcolm X was apparently gunned down due to a rivalry within the Nation of Islam that had, he wasn't killed by white racists, right, as you would probably expect. And so we don't really know if the Russians had him whacked. The Russians are denying that they had anything to do with this. But what do you make of all this? I mean, it's disturbing when you're a political cartoonist to think that this can happen, even if it happens in Poland. I'm kind of surprised it doesn't happen more often, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that because I hadn't heard the news until you turned me on to it, and I did not know this person at all. And it's one of those things where it's just like, this stuff is more and more normalized, the snuffing out of contrarians in every version of communication. And as you said, it has been going on for a long time. And one thing about this particular artist is, yes, you can call him a cartoonist, but if I don't know, Ted, are you going to show any of his stuff? Do you have some of his stuff to?
I was not going to, but go ahead.
I just wanted to make the point that it's, quite often people who don't usually follow political cartooning or have their favorites, it's a profession that is not as vibrant as it once was. A lot of people think political cartooning is simple line drawings, looking for just the laugh at the end, sort of in a way to minimize the threat. I mean, sometimes when it comes to how dastardly power can exemplify its wrongdoing, this particular artist did things in the tradition of, Daumier and other people who did, used it as a fine art to demonstrate what is grotesque about power and despots, and injustice. What is the emotional content of that, without trying to get into talking about it like it's, one team against another. It's not like a conversation about sports. So I think that's why, if he was targeted by Putin, has Putin ever said, of all the people that he's killed, yes, okay, I did that one? It's always, no, we had nothing to do with it. But if you look at this person's work, it's much harder to argue against non-captioned pieces of art that are so raw and expressive and stark in their criticism. And so the only thing that the powerful people feel like that they can do, or certainly stand behind, is snuffing out of people like that.
Right. By the way, if I don't know if you can do this while we're talking, if you can send me your cartoons as attachments, it'll actually help me to show them. I can't get them the way that you sent them to me. But anyway, so we'll work out the tech here. Okay. No, look, it's we have no evidence whatsoever as to, the only thing we know are these two Belarusian guys are under arrest. We don't even know if they had anything to do with it. And the politics are thick here, right? Russia is an authoritarian state. Poland is in some ways to the right of Russia politically. So they certainly don't get along. So, there could be a political agenda here, like, hey, let's fuck with the Russians. There could easily not be. Russia has certainly, had people whacked who bug them and are critics of the state. I guess the thing is, I'm reminded of the fact that, like, Charlie Hebdo, 12, if memory serves, 12 cartoonists, French cartoonists, were all killed at their desks, right? In a matter of a few minutes apart. And at the time, I remember that, like, you had all these editorials in newspapers and magazines decrying that the United States, all newspapers and magazines that themselves had either never run political cartoons or had gotten rid of all of their political cartoons. Right. And I remember saying, like, publicly, like, more cartoonists died in that one office in Paris than worked full time east of the Mississippi River in the United States. Right. It's like, okay, so you can kill a political cartoonist, but even if the person's still alive, but their art's not appearing anywhere, you're killing political cartooning itself as an art form. And, economic censorship, which is what this is a great example of it. Just a couple of days ago, a guy who I know pretty well, who has found himself in charge of an online media outlet, was posting on social media that he's hiring a bunch of editors and writers. And I just posted, hey, how about a cartoonist? Hire a cartoonist.
Yeah.
So many words, right? Why don't you have some pictures? It is the internet, after all.
Right.
No response. And this is a good guy, but they just don't see it. And, like, they're murdering this profession that, like, actually readers really like and care about. So,
it also, I just want to say too, you make a really good point, because it also uses the language of imagery, right? Which is, particularly now with all the social media platforms, that's all short form communication that we've been doing forever. So it's not like it's going to be legible to anybody who looks at it. It's not like we have to teach people how to engage with this kind of communication. So that's probably where you're heading with this discussion, is what is it about this particular form of communication that has people that are good guys and good women in positions of hiring cartoonists? What is stopping them?
I don't know. I feel like part of it is editors have always needed to be educated, always have been. But, like, they're less educated than they ever have been, and they seem less open to becoming educated about it. And it's also, they look around. I think it's, Scott Stantis has always said this, that, like, this profession will revive when someone decides to hire a cartoonist, and that cartoonist becomes a big fucking deal and then the other editors will say, "Oh my God, look at XYZ publication. They just got all these prizes and they're making buku bucks because of this cartoonist. We should get a cartoonist too." In other words, they all copy each other. They don't have an original thought in their head. And basically we need that kind of big hit. But right now we don't seem to be in, anywhere near that. Nobody, they're all like they started copying each other when they were firing cartoonists, and they're still kind of in that mode. It's like, well, that's just not something you do, instead of, just thinking for yourself.
I would even, I'm sending you this stuff now. If people have noticed, my eyes have been darting around. It's not because I'm having a seizure of some sort.
That's
preparing my things for you. But I would even say it's even slightly more insidious than what you're suggesting. I think that probably the main reason why you and I looks like we're in our mutual attics.
Yes. Wearing, instead of at the newspaper office where we belong.
Right. I think it has to do with the fact that more and more the audience for cartooning, or I would even say the audience for critical thinking, how do you commodify that? We're all, if people who own means of production of communication and so forth, if you think you're dealing with customers and not comrades of any sort, what are you going to do? And especially the work that we do. What we do is warn about the dangers of hierarchy, right? And also try to put a human heart inside of all political conversation. And once you start to do that, once you put if you attempt to put the heart in the center of political conversation, what you're trying to do is you're trying to humanize the conversation, the discussion. Politics cannot survive that, because it attempts to prove that you need a small group of very powerful people to oversee what the majority of riffraff are able to have access to, what they're going to be able to say, all of those things. So again, I think that not to just be like, you and I are just so brave for doing what we're doing. But really what we're trying to do is we're trying to have the kinds of private conversations we typically have with people that we care about, friends and so forth, in the most honest way possible. We're just trying to make that public. That's the history of satire. That's the history of stand-up. That's the history of novels. It's the history of all of poetry. All of these kinds of forms of communication have to do with, all right, what does this really mean? What does this really feel like? Right. And that's poison to a bureaucracy that is attempting to codify all members of society, and to not want to hear their voices, not want to say that we are all equal, because if we're all equal, then we all have to participate. No, it's much easier to have people submissive and relegated to customers and submissive audience members who are there just to react, not to participate.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's depressing. Got a question from one of our viewers, Vic S. Adams. Are there lawyers telling them not to? I can't imagine that there's a specific, legal opinion out there saying, editorial cartooning is going to get you sued. But I mean, it is it's got to be subconsciously out there. Cartoonists are trouble. And we're spicy, and I know one interesting, thing that I talked to a very famous New York Times editor about when he came to speak at Columbia, where I went to school. And he said, I asked him, why have you never hired an editorial cartoonist? And I shouldn't say never, because back in the 50s, they had 4, but all at the same time. But, why in recent years, since McCarthyism, have you not had them? And he said, they're really hard to edit. And I was like, in other words, with words, obviously this, strike this phrase, insert this sentence here, right?
Right.
But, add this Oxford comma, whatever. But actually, I mean, it is a little harder to edit them, but not that much harder. The cartoonist submits a rough sketch. You're like, you turn the bear into an aardvark, done.
Right.
The aardvark should have 3 ears or whatever. I mean,
yeah, yes, and that is a form of political cartooning. I was lucky enough when I did have jobs at magazines and newspapers that I only handed in finished pieces of art. I never said that what I was going to do. I never gave any indication of how hard I was going to be hitting an issue. And I think that's the appeal of that is the same appeal of we're all looking for surprise. We're all looking to be delighted, and especially when it comes to injecting political cartooning with the like a punchline of sorts. It can be a punchline that makes you arrive at a laugh. It can be a punchline that has you arrive at an insight. But all of those things, I live my life to be surprised by those things. I don't want any forewarning. It's just like, all right, I'm going to tell you a knock-knock joke. Now, don't be alarmed at what's on the other side of the door. Let me prepare you for it. Are you ready for it? And then you give the punchline, it wouldn't work. And it's the same thing when it comes to, different forms of enlightenment. There's all different levels of that. Like I said, it can be joyful, it can be upsetting, it can be all of these things. We're trying to show we're trying to have a reconsideration of mainstream ideas that we are all inundated with every single day, that we already, not only do we think that we know it, but we're numb to it now. And I think that that's one of the dangers that we're facing now. It's that, what's it called? It's called semantic satiation. Do you know what that is? It's that thing where if I say like kangaroo, you start saying it over and over again, all of a sudden it starts to feel very strange and doesn't have any real connection to the world, right? It becomes just a funny sound. And I think that kind of the semantic satiation of news can do the same thing, to where all of a sudden you get used to either the stench or the noise or the cacophony of bad news, to where all of a sudden you're not even aware of it anymore. Just take the example of Gaza. I mean, it's just 6-8 months ago, it was at the top of my news feed. Mm-hmm. It's just like, I'm hard pressed to find any. I mean, certainly there's people reporting on it, but here in, mainstream America, where it was never really talked about at length or honestly, it still was something that was unavoidable. But now, like through the normalization of bullshit, which is, I think, is an argument for why Trump got elected again, and why Trump now is everything that administration continues to do should be jarring, and should be something that should keep us at the edge of our seats and infuriated, right? So as a political cartoonist and as a political artist, it's our job to figure out how to keep that thing from disappearing, becoming part of the wallpaper. How do you, but also telling the truth about it, not increasing a fiction surrounding it, but figuring out a newer and more interesting way to keep telling the truth so that it stays on people's radar and they want to stay engaged with it.
You brought up a lot of stuff that I wanted to, talk about. The normalization of bullshit. You're saying, well, we should stay. I mean, first of all, I think there's a distinguish to be, we need to distinguish bullshit from lies. Politicians always lie. When Donald Rumsfeld said, we know where the WMDs are, they're north, east, south, and west of Baghdad somewhat. That's a lie. Bullshit is Iran's navy is at the bottom of the sea and has been completely destroyed. They still represent a massive threat and could kill us all with nuclear weapons. Those two things can't both be true. Right. It was possible that the WMDs were. I mean, that's a lie. But it was possible. Bullshit is when you say something that can't be true. And I guess.
And the intent, though, let me just say, because I want to piggyback on that, because there is, and now there's a way to sort of break down bullshit slightly. What is the intent of the bullshit? Because a lot of art and a lot of what I do is a form of bullshit, but it's trying to tell various truths of lies to get to a version of the truth, right? Like sometimes bullshit is just, you're conflating all of these things and you're adding invention and interpretation and whatever your subjective.
I don't think that's bullshit.
I think there's a way to frame it. I think that as bullshit, I just wanted to parse out what that is, because I understand what you're saying. Yes. If the intention of your fabrication is to narrow the argument and have somebody arrive at a particular, then it becomes a lie, to arrive at the lie, that's one thing. Using bullshit to sort of like explode an argument and then make it the onus for the person who is receiving the bullshit to then try to find what the truth is, that I would say is a version of bullshit that I like.
But I don't think it's bullshit at all. I think that's like because you're operating with intellectual honesty. You are, you're the magician showing that the girl really hasn't been sawed in half inside the box, and you're exposing you're using exaggeration and metaphor to say like, well, if we push this ridiculous sophistry to the nth degree, then therefore look at this is ridiculous. I mean, the fact that you're showing, that you're being honest, you're not claiming something that just isn't true. For example, if you said, Israel caused COVID, and as we know, then since they caused COVID, they could do anything. I mean, that's, I guess, a lot.
I know, but listen, you could also create a satire where you said that Israel caused COVID, right?
Right, but it would have to be
the methodology again. So again, it's really a matter of the intent, because you know what the original definition of bullshit was. Now, this was in the early 70s when it all of a sudden appeared in the dictionary, and I remember David Steinberg, the comedian, talking about it. And what it was bullshit, noun, nonsense. That was the definition of bullshit, right? So if you can just relegate it to just
not
like
that anymore, though.
No, not well. Again, so that's once you weaponize something like nonsense, yes, it becomes the bullshit that you're talking about. But once you use nonsense to invest a different kind of trajectory into whatever you're, attempting, it becomes something else. But I take your point. Yes, certainly words, now if I were just having a conversation with you, I'm like, that's bullshit. It's not a matter of just like, well, what do you mean? When you say that I'm speaking bullshit, obviously we know what it means because of its popular use and its popular application from politicians and people that we don't like. Right.
Now, you said that the appropriate reaction to bullshit, I would just say to outrageous things, should be a constant state of outrage. But I've thought a lot about this. I don't think it's possible for the human to expect that from the human brain. Human beings can't operate in a state of constant rage or reactivity, or they just basically drop dead, right? I mean, even if I've spent 6 weeks in a war zone. I guarantee you I wasn't like I was stressed out, but I wasn't the whole time like, oh my God. I mean, you can't, you just can't. Right. And so I think that's the genius of this variety of fascism that we're living in, right? I mean, fascism, we forget this, is a cult of, Mussolini theorized about that. It's a cult of action. And Mussolini said repeatedly, it's better under fascism for a government to do something, even if it's stupid, even if it's counterproductive, even if it's self-destructive, rather than nothing. And if you doubt that, you can kind of look at the Biden years where it felt like really nothing was happening, right? Right. Like there almost was no president. And then you went in, now every day you wake up and you're like, oh, now what? And people, many people, not us, they tune out the news and they're just like, I can't be bothered. We all have friends who are like that. I just can't. What the fuck is he up to now? And that's a plan, right? They flooded the zone. That's in Project 2025. They said we're going to keep the libs, on their heels. We're going to keep the shit flying fast and furious. By the time they're starting to maybe react to the first thing, we're on to the seventh thing. It works. It's smart. And I don't know. And you and I, we're always thinking like, well, if I was president or I was the Democrats, I would do this. But I don't know what I would do about that flow of trying to drink from a fire hose. I don't know that there is. I mean, if someone has an answer, chime in, because I don't know what the fuck it is.
I have something of an answer. And I think that we've talked about this a few times before. I think that what is missing now is a place to have that kind of a conversation about what is happening. And again, I think I probably said it on the last podcast when we were together, which is if we can start considering all of these things as a cultural problem rather than a political one, I think that is a strategy to move forward. Because I'm sure that everybody listening here, in order to engage with politics that they find most reprehensible, what do? You go to your friends, right? You go to your family, right? You go to these places where you can be honest in the moment and just be vulnerable. Show that you're hurting from it, right? Mm-hmm. And politics you're not supposed to be vulnerable in any way. It's for winners, it's for proud people who know, independent people who don't need the support of other people, right? So just talking to you and just engaging with this sort of stuff, it just makes me think about, I think that what we have to do whenever we're talking about politics is find out a way to bring in what our personal experience just in life is outside of politics. Because once you start to do that, most of our days are built with that. The meaning of life is camaraderie with, friends and relatives and love, nature, music, all of these things. Now, all of these things are best manifested in a culture. They don't really fit comfortably into politics, right? So just if you even consider it's been true for quite a long time, the statistics for suicide yearly is around 50,000 people commit suicide. Those people who succeed, the number for people who attempt is around, 1.5 million. And those are the people that get reported at attempting. It's probably much higher. So then you have to ask the question, what is it about the society that we're living in that is convincing that number of people that life is so cheap that it's not worth living, right? It's those kinds of conversations. So again, if you just push politics aside and just try to figure out, all right, what's the Democratic solution for this? What is the Republican, what do the libertarians say about all that sort of stuff? That's a distraction. That's a huge distraction from the real meaningful conversations that we should be having about people in our community that are really suffering for any number of reasons, living inside of a society where all of your survival needs are determined by what your income is. That's a number one thing, so then to survive in a society that is a capitalistic society like ours, then you do have to pull your punches. You do have to figure out, how not to say the wrong thing and then get penalized for it, because we're being told all the time there are penalties for you acting that way, saying those things, having those concerns. I lost my job, the 11-year teaching job at the university for that sort of thing. Yeah. Right. So again, I think all of this is, it's really important for us to figure out how to re-energize the culture and try to get more artists involved in public dialogue about the most basic question: why is life worth living? What can we do to demonstrate that to each other, and how can we involve ourselves in that?
I mean, the thing is, lest anybody think you're exaggerating, it feels right. I mean, I don't live far from a commuter rail station, and probably once a week someone kills themselves at that station. It's so fucking bad that you kind of have to allow for the possibility that you're going to have to wait for a body to be scraped off the track in your scheduling for where you need to be. What the fuck is wrong with our, I know what the fuck is wrong.
Yeah.
I have a cartoon on my drafting table that is about like 988, right? When you go to a bridge and there's like, life is worth living, don't kill yourself. And I'm thinking, that is the only time you hear that is right when you're about to jump off a bridge, right?
Right.
But the rest of the time, when your boss is firing you because the CEO wants to give himself a raise, you don't hear that. Or, when you're passed over for a job for a stupid reason, or they come to evict you from your home because you got fired from your job for a stupid reason, they're not saying, don't worry, we're here for you, man. Support's here. We love you. We're all in it together. No, it's like, why is it so precious for us to save your dumb ass when you finally decide the people who are killing themselves, they got the message. They fucking heard. Everyone's like, fuck you, you suck. We don't care about you. And they're like, okay, I'm out. No.
Right. It reads like a sign from like the sanitation people who are standing there with the bucket and the mop, just like, listen, please don't make me have to clean you up, Yeah,
it's
and it does.
like, my life sucks enough as it is. Don't make me clean up the ruins of your protoplasm.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, that's a good insight. But even getting back to that, like one of the things, just so you know, you contributed to a book that I've edited with fellow cartoonist Andy Singer, and I'm submitting it actually this Monday.
I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, it's completely done, and the subject of the book is cartoonists who have been censored or attacked and doxxed for producing commentary critical of Israel, which has been going on for a long time. So some of the cartoons in there are from decades old from some of the contributors, and a good number of contributors are outside of the United States, and a nice handful are actually in Palestine, a couple in Gaza, and so just the way we're talking, I wish more people had direct contact with some people who are in a situation like the Palestinians are, because what you get to experience is the deep humanitarian crisis that exists there. All right. So we all know that. We can see the pictures. We know the news, those who are willing to look at it. But having interactions with some people who are still there and enduring this is they are still able to make jokes. They're still able to find joy in their day-to-day hell. Right. And so that goes back to just what we were talking about. If you can recognize the ability of human beings to, endure catastrophe, injustice, all of these things, you saw that the Black community for 400 years had to figure out how to navigate, the maintenance and the protection of their souls. Talk about a population that on paper would have every justification to just be in a constant rage to kill every single white person on this continent.
True.
It is them, right? So how did they avoid that? They invested their time in life on figuring out what makes life meaningful, not looking at what makes it meaningless as it's meted out by the people who have their boots on their necks. And I think that, yes, obviously here living in the United States now under the Trump administration and rogue GOP politics, it's certainly not that extreme. We figure out how to move through that. But in the meantime, we have to laugh and cry and be rageful and be hopeful and be optimistic, allow pessimism to sort of just like, satisfy our feeling of defeat momentarily. That's how we pause. And that's how we also see the parameters of what the fight ahead is, like all of the things that make life worth living, you know. And so before I burst into song, Ted, please rescue me.
Okay, I will rescue you. So let's talk a little bit about getting it right and victory, right? So right now, we on the left who've criticized Israel's actions in Gaza and the West Bank and elsewhere, we should be celebrating a victory. The world has clearly turned against Israel and its actions. The United States is distancing itself in a way that we've never seen before. Iran has just received $300 billion in war reparations. I mean, when have we seen war reparations at the behest of the United States ever? We didn't even give any money to Vietnam.
Right.
And it's like, basically, Trump has acknowledged that he lost to Iran, and Iran has insisted that Israel back off from Lebanon. And it looks like there's a lot of pressure on them to do so. Right now, those of us who were getting doxxed and abused and treated like shit for being on the anti-genocide side of the equation are like, I don't want to say the anti-Israeli, because I'm not against Israelis. I'm just against Israeli government policy. I guess we were early. We got punished. Where the fuck is our reward? Like who's gonna come now and say like, hey, Mr. Fish and Ted Rall, they were right about that. They probably deserve some extra credit, more than all the jackasses who were talking about, Iran having developing nuclear weapons and leaving Paris under a mushroom cloud. I mean, I guess the point is we should be, I don't know how, we should maybe be crowing a little bit and saying like, we were right. You guys now all agree with us. And now we were right. So you're welcome. Right. But we don't kind of do that because I don't know.
We're decent. We're decent people. I think that's, I mean, and it is true. I mean, I have had that feeling, and I've had that feeling a lot, just over time. It was the same thing with the Iraq War, right? Mm-hmm. It just took, I'm just like, really, do we have to have years and years of absolute mayhem and destruction of just like, not only just our foreign policy just being demonstrated as being evil,
kill a million people.
And then look what happened with the domestic policy and this and the Patriot Act and all that sort of stuff. There's still stuff that has damaged this society in a way that is just like, will it ever be repaired? Right. But again, I think that our job is to talk about it, not in a aha thing, although that's the impulse, to be like, how dare you for not seeing what was obvious to people who had, more open minds and more open hearts, but to say, okay, now what we have to do, now you can see what a critical mind reveals about pending disaster for future events, right? So this again goes back to that question about like, we need a reinvigorated culture that can tell these stories. Where are the novelists telling these stories? Who reads novels anymore? Right. And just as you were saying earlier about just political cartoonists and the political artists, right? Plays. I mean, at one time, the theater used to be a place to go to have this kind of conversation and have this kind of demonstration where it was
true,
where you saw people acting in, staged private places, having these hard conversations and having these, human interactions. We have to let people know that they are not so alone, that it is okay to actually make a mistake. Maybe that's the point I'm trying to make. I think it's dangerous if you shame people into having made a mistake.
Is it?
I think it is. I think it is because
go.
Because we all make mistakes. And I think that what is necessary is that we have to curate a public space where we voice what we think and feel openly knowing that if we do make a mistake, that we aren't going to be doxxed, that we aren't going to be silenced, that there's going to be more grace with our idiocy. Because that's what I want. That's what I want among my friends and family. If I do something wrong, or if I say something wrong, you know, I have a big brother who's done this my whole life. I'll say something and he'll find something very sharp and barbed to stick into me to realize that I had just made a complete fool of myself. But it's done with, you know, love and expectation that we're going to continue having a relationship. Right. So I think that that is what is necessary inside society. Otherwise, you have people that are allowed to fester underground and incite their own fanaticism without having any way to, you know, communicate that. Look at, again, we're back to talking about Trump. You know, look at the world. Look at all of that. I mean, if we were, so many people were so surprised when Trump came to power, and the level of stupidity and open racism, misogyny, all of that stuff became part of the new paradigm for, you know, mainstream status quo thinking. All of a sudden it was normalized. People were just like, wow, I didn't know that there were that many crazy people out there. They're there, but we just got to give them more opportunity to demonstrate their stupidity so that we have time then to have a conversation that helps them get beyond their stupidity and their superstitions and their bigotry and their, you know, all of those things.
We need to engage them in a respectful way. I agree with that. And like, look, I don't think, maybe shaming's not really appropriate. I take your point there, but I mean, surely there should sort of be something that resembles, that it goes counter to the anti-meritocracy that we have in punditry today. I mean, with so much at stake, I mean, literally matters of war and peace that we're talking about. You know, if everyone was be like Barbara Lee, right? If everyone was Barbara Lee, 50,000 Afghans would be alive today. 1 million Iraqis would be alive today. And we wouldn't have blown through, you know, billions of dollars that would have been better spent on pretty much anything else. I mean, a lot's at stake. And yet the people who consistently get these things wrong, like Thomas Friedman, are elevated, and we keep listening to them and they keep getting invited back. And then people who consistently get things right don't. And this is the only field where that happens, right? I mean, if you had a stockbroker who consistently advised wealthy people to buy stocks that lost value, that person would lose their job. They would not be, they certainly wouldn't be doing well. And people who consistently pick stocks that go up do well. But like in our profession, the cartoonists, the columnists, the essayists, the talking heads on TV who pontificate about politics, who are the most successful, are people like William Crystal, who are always wrong, always wrong.
Yeah.
And when there's a foreign policy crisis, you will literally never hear someone at the table who says, you know, it's really not America's business.
Right. Yeah. No, and interesting, because hearing you talk, and I think you're 100% right. A way to look at it is, okay, you mentioned columnists, cartoonists. These are people who are responding to a conversation, the parameters of which were drawn by power first. Okay, so if you're having power draw the parameters of an issue and then handing it off for your response, it's the impulse should not be, okay, we're going to stay inside that box that they've given us, that they've drawn us, because it's actually an inaccuracy. So you can't have a sensible conversation with an inaccuracy. So you need to have these people, like you said, you know, what is the sensible point of view, right? What would the victim have to say? What would the person who is actually going to suffer the consequences of what is being talked about? And typically, yes, of course, columnists who are paying fealty to power, oh my God, they're going to have their head up that ass for as long as they can feed from it, right? And what's interesting is we used to live in a culture that would allow different kinds of conversations to happen. in fact, there was a really interesting thing that CBS did. I think it was CBS. Right before the first moonshot, they put together a panel discussion. Get ready for this, because this is not what would happen nowadays. The broad question was, what are the ramifications of human beings going into space? Now, you could talk about it like, what are the financial things, but what does that say about our concept of community on the planet versus inside the universe? What are we expecting to find? All of those things. They invited to this panel conversation, Bill Moyers was there, Buster Crabbe, who played, I guess Buck Rogers from the original,
so funny,
right? Kurt Vonnegut was there. So these are all people from different areas to then bring their perspective into a question that should be interesting to all of us. Now, so just imagine if you were able to convene that kind of panel to talk about just like, what does American democracy look like right now, right? And not just relegate it to political thinkers or commentators or pundits, right? Because again, their vocabulary for this thing is very narrow, and everything is strategized to land in a particular way, the least offensive way, and also the way that is not going to invite participation from the general public, right? Art does that, right? And I think that that's pulling this back to our Russian friend who was killed on Monday. Mm-hmm. You should look at the work that he was doing, because it sort of did that. It sort of was just like this. A lot of his stuff is about how grotesque, again, things are. There's a toxicity here.
That's a very Eastern European aesthetic, too. Yeah. We should. Speaking of showing stuff, I did get your stuff. So let's, if you don't mind, let's have a little show and tell.
Let's do it.
All right. So here are some Mr. Fish cartoons. All right. We'll go with this one first.
Oh, yes. Thanks for your patience during the renovation of Gaza. It pretty much says what I needed it to say. And again, like, this got a lot of participation and a lot of people engaged with this.
This is so I view this as a reminder cartoon. Like,
that's why I did it.
By the way, this happened. Don't forget.
Exactly. And that was the exact impulse. I mean, it's just, as I was saying earlier, my frustration at the fact that it's not, at the forefront of everything continues to upset and baffle me.
And it should, everyone. Okay, here we go.
Aha. Yeah, that took me days to complete. And I actually did it for the book that you and I are participating in. Mm-hmm. And again, I think one of the jobs, a way to frame what I think that we do. Okay, something like this, obviously, I take, excuse me, I take a lot of time with it, right? And so what does that say to somebody looking at it?
By the way, we should explain that this is a direct version of a very famous Nazi propaganda poster that depicted Hitler as a Teutonic knight with the Nazi flag. Anyway, and that's obviously Bibi Netanyahu. Yeah.
Yes. So exactly. Yeah. So that's what the reference is to. So of course it's going to, infuriate people to a very, a great degree. But other people, it's going to also ask me, did I need to go this far with this type of cartoon? Now, again, what I was going to say about the work
that's what people always ask you.
They do. But this one, it's funny with something like this, people see that there is craftsmanship here, and they're just like, wow, that's beautiful. Why did you have to do something so upsetting? And so
it's an absurd, the original, and this is very true to it, was an absurd image. I mean, Adolf Hitler did not look anything like a Teutonic knight. He was not his physicality wasn't like that. And so the idea that he was able to it showcased the absurdity of the Nazi regime, that they tried to portray him that way, much in the same way that that MAGA memes online depict a big muscle-bound, Donald Trump, with riding bears and flying on the backs of eagles into battle with missiles flying all around. I mean, this is a guy, he dodged the Vietnam War. I mean,
yeah. Well, again, people don't know how to read irony. They don't know how to read satire, because again, that to me, when I see that stuff, it is such, cackling glorification of something that just does not merit it at all.
So absurd.
It's so absurd that it should be high satire, rather than court painting of the most grotesque sort.
It's so, totally ridiculous.
This was me just breathing into that feeling of there is minimally, we should just continue to give a shit as much as we can without exerting ourselves, and eventually, hopefully, it'll get rid of the fool.
It's like shoe fly.
Exactly. Yeah. Because it really is. I mean, I'm glad that you said that, because when you really look at it, the fact that people are so angry and so reverential of Trump is shocking to me. I mean, you're probably the same way. It's just like some people who just even people who are around him and just even call him president. I'm always just like, have you not seen Donald Trump your entire life? Right. This is Donald Trump who you are looking up to as just like, you are the most, important human being on the planet. It's Donald Trump. It's never been anybody other than Donald Trump.
It's still Donald Trump without describing what he is. No, I mean, that's so true. And then you see these lick spittles online, like Ben Shapiro or whatever, and they're saying, best president of my lifetime, best, aren't we so lucky to live under this guy? I mean, couldn't you just give it a rest and just be like, I'm really good with what he did this week with blah, blah, blah. But right. You have to be best president ever. Really? He kicks Thomas Jefferson's ass? Really? I mean,
it's like these people have never seen, they've never seen a newsreel of people doing the same thing with just other dictators and stuff.
I know.
It's just this is being captured on film, you buffoons.
Aren't you embarrassed? I mean, probably the man who I would have most liked to have seen elected president in my lifetime was Bernie Sanders. And I guarantee you that there's no way you would have found me online saying shit like this about Bernie Sanders.
Right.
It's he's still just a pudgy old dude from Brooklyn, I mean, it's be serious. Right. It's so embarrassing. All right, let's see. Here we go.
We can do it because we say so. Fuck international law.
Of course, this is the famous Rosie the Riveter poster.
Oh yes, indeed it is. And so again, what I was going to say about the earlier ones that you showed, I think a way to encapsulate what our job is to if we want to blow somebody's mind, right, surprise them with content and imagery, blowing their mind so that there is some shrapnel that all of a sudden they say, okay, I've got to move on and reassemble my thinking. In the process of reassembling their thinking, there is then that opportunity to be like, wait a minute, this part made no sense here. And there was actually an imbalance. Let me not add that part. And maybe after the reconstruction, they have some new insight into a version of the truth that is much more compliant with human life.
I love the fact that you always use different, which I do not do, different drawing styles and different graphic presentations. It gets attention,
Yeah, it matches my mood, and it's stuff that I want to see. I would get bored if all my stuff had, was branded, which early on, that was actually advice from somebody to me. They're just like, you're never going to make it anywhere because you're not branding yourself. I should be able to look at a fish cartoon from the other side of the room and say, that's a fish cartoon. Like I'm looking at a Zippy cartoon, that's a Zippy cartoon.
And you can. I mean, definitely. So obviously, this is Alice, in Wonderland.
Parts, yeah.
Okay, and one more from you. Then we'll get to some of mine if anyone's still interested in that. All right, I like this one. I like them all.
Oh, that's brand. Yeah, that's spanking new. Great news. A judge has ordered the removal of an unseemly neck tattoo from an ungodly shit show still threatening to kill us all. And I only did this just as a reminder, because I was very happy too when they pulled the Trump name off of the Kennedy Center. I did feel like it just felt like, I was able for a second to just fill my lungs completely with air, even if it was momentarily. But I had to remind myself, okay, yes, this is a surface alteration that is gratifying, but there's still something else that's going on here that is, a deeper trauma that we have definitely got to deal with.
No question. No question. All right, let's do a few of mine and then we'll call it a show because we're coming up on an hour here. And here we go. So the satire here was just like we keep hearing this. This was from earlier this week. Basically, how it's nonsense. This is more about like a comment on language and Orwellianism. Like Israel literally, according to the government of Lebanon, bombed Lebanon 3,500 times during the ceasefire. Is it meaningful to say that there's a ceasefire? Why don't we just say that Israel is back at war?
Right.
I hate shit like that.
Yeah, it makes me crazy. I mean, especially you're 100% right. And I haven't figured out what cartoon I wanted to do about that, but the use of the word ceasefire I was thinking about it this morning. I'm glad you did that cartoon.
You just like stop that.
Yeah.
So I was looking at Zillow ads and I thought, okay, I'm going to do this one. It's the picture of obviously the demolished Rose Garden. We don't even talk about the Rose Garden. We talk about the East Wing. Yeah. And of course the UFC match in front of the White House and all that. I mean, it's all it's symbolism, right? I mean, I don't actually have a problem. I mean, I guess I do have a problem with people beating the shit out of each other and causing CTE. But I mean, it should be illegal, really. But I mean, it's like in terms of the trashy aspect of it, I just thought this, it's idiocracy. It's perfect,
Yeah. It's spectacle. It's
property is as is. And I also want to this is also kind of my reminder, like, hey, whoever comes up, if you want to be considered not shitty, you're going to have to fix all this.
Yeah.
Like if you're game. So this has been Trump said 40 times that we were going to have a peace agreement, that he'd already signed one, that it was all done. So I just thought I would do like this maze cartoon.
That's great. I've done a couple maze cartoons and I find them the most exhausting things to make. I don't know about A, the perspective of it, and then B, you want to depict a maze that is intricate and confusing. Yeah. And it's just like,
I tried to do an Escher and I choked.
Yeah, it's not easy.
I was like, fuck that. And then let's see, a couple more. And then we'll call it a show. It's from, here we go. There it is.
God, chairs and mazes. Jeez, you're busy.
It's like, be drawn. So it's like, I just thought it's funny that a president who's so interested in crowd sizes decided to hold a 250th birthday for the country where he only invited half the country.
Right.
It's kind of like, if you want everyone to show up, this is not the way to go about it. It's kind of like, it's like, I want everyone to come over to my house for barbecue, but it's only going to be vegan food. Like,
right.
A lot of people will not be coming. Okay, and then we'll do one more. So, Trump literally said, "Oh, I love inflation. I don't care." It's like, I just thought this was like, well, of course he doesn't care. He's been grifting his way from fake billions into real billions now. He's loaded. He doesn't care if things cost a little more. I was happy with the way this cartoon turned out. It was
Yeah.
Anyway. So anyway, yeah, that pretty much does it. Anything else? How do you feel, before I let you go, about the current state of the Middle East? I mean, I have to admit, with Israel as a crazy rabid dog, having been isolated now and like in danger of being cut off by the United States, they're sitting on top of that nuclear arsenal that they're not supposed to have. I feel like nothing's more dangerous than a country that's had a blank check for years and now suddenly has been told your credit's no good here. I mean, this is a dangerous time, right?
Oh, it's 100%, and I often feel like that because there are no grown-ups minding the store right now. I think that as the universe shrinks and people become more myopic to their options, it does scare me. Where I know what I'll do and be able to survive it. I will have a strategic nuclear strike, somewhere, which it just doesn't exist. And I think that the fact that fewer and fewer people understand how small the world is and how interconnected we all are, the greater danger is that, again, letting the parameters of political conversation dominate is dangerous, and then letting the actions of political people dominate is even more dangerous.
That's a great place to end it. Thank you so much for sitting in for Scott.
Absolutely. I'm not going to do the rap at the end.
Yeah, there will be, with no Scott means no singing. All right. Bye everyone.